imagine for a second that you're just going about your normal week.
Yeah.
You sit down for dinner, maybe grab something quick from a local spot,
Right.
and the next morning you wake up with a stomach ache, bit of nausea.
Classic.
You think to
Well,
yourself, like, I probably just ate something bad. I'll just sleep it off. I mean,
eh,
it's the most universal, mundane human experience.
Absolutely.
But let's fast forward just 72 hours. That mild stomach ache has, well, violently escalated.
Yeah, it's not a standard bug anymore.
Not at all. You are in agonizing pain, your body temperature is spiking dangerously, and your kidneys, the vital organs that literally filter your blood, are rapidly beginning to shut down.
It's terrifying, and the local doctors, they are completely stunned.
Right, because they are looking at your charts, and the timeline makes absolutely zero sense to them. You haven't just contracted a severe illness, you have literally just become ground zero for a terrifying new evolution of a very ancient disease.
It is the clinical equivalent of watching a slow-moving storm suddenly turn into a Category 5 hurricane without any warning whatsoever.
Exactly. So welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack a massive, highly detailed stack of sources.
We've got a lot to get through.
We really do. We are looking at clinical case reports, comprehensive medical reviews, and interestingly, a highly specific, actionable business plan crafted by a physician named Dr. Kadiali Srivatsa.
Yeah, that business plan is fascinating.
It is. We're investigating a very specific, real-world case of a 34-year-old woman in Hindupur that's a city in the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh.
And her case, that terrifying 72-hour medical escalation you mentioned, it served as this massive, blaring red flag for a highly virulent, extensively antibiotic-resistant strain of typhoid.
Right. But we are just going to examine the biology of this superbug, are we?
No. We are going to look at the immediate response. We'll explore how Dr. Srivatsa utilized an artificial intelligence system, it's known as Dr. Maya AI, to identify this anomaly in real time.
Which is incredible, because it allowed him to completely bypass the traditional, sluggish medical bureaucracy.
Exactly. He was able to instantly alert public health officials across New Delhi, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka.
Which brings us to the ultimate goal of the documents we're analyzing today. We're going to examine the proposed nationwide solution to this crisis.
The Prima kiosk.
Yes, the Prima kiosk, which is powered by that same Dr. Maya AI. We'll lay out the exact argument Dr. Srivatsa has designed to motivate the Prime Minister and the Health Minister of India to implement this kiosk.
He calls it the Power One product.
The Power One product, right. The pitch is that this is the system necessary to protect humanity, radically reduce healthcare disparities, and, prevent catastrophic epidemics in this new post-antibiotic era.
But to understand the sheer scale of that nationwide solution, we really have to start by looking at what went so incredibly wrong at the microscopic level in Hindupur.
Right. Ground zero. We have to look at the escalation. So let's break down the clinical presentation of this 34-year-old woman.
Okay, so she is married, living in Hindupur. Her symptoms begin with acute, severe abdominal pain.
Just really sudden.
Very sudden, and this is rapidly followed by bloody diarrhea and persistent, intractable vomiting.
Okay, wait. When you say bloody diarrhea, biologically speaking, what is actually happening there? Because that's not just a symptom of a mild bug.
No, not at all. It indicates severe mucosal damage.
Okay.
The lining of her intestinal tract is literally being invaded, inflamed, and ulcerated by a pathogen.
Wow.
Yeah, it's causing the tissue to actually bleed into the digestive tract. It is a sign of incredibly aggressive, invasive bacterial action.
But despite that terrifying symptom, bleeding internally, basically she waits. The case reports highlight this crucial 48-hour delay before she seeks any professional medical help.
Yeah, that's a key detail.
And if you're listening to this and wondering, why would someone wait 2 days while bleeding internally? Well, you have to consider the context of accessing healthcare.
Exactly, the socioeconomic factors.
Right. She likely hoped it was a self-limiting gastrointestinal issue. It will just pass, avoiding the cost and the logistical hurdle of going to a clinic.
And that human instinct to just wait and see, that is the pathogen's greatest advantage.
How so?
Because during those 48 hours, she is not only highly infectious to everyone around her, but the bacteria is silently organizing this massive systemic offensive inside her own body.
It's building an army while she's just resting at home.
Precisely. By the time she finally breaks down and visits a local doctor, the clinical picture has already shifted. She is exhibiting a very specific physiological response known in the medical community as a stepladder fever.
A stepladder fever. I want to understand the mechanics of that. Why exactly is it called a stepladder?
It's because of the specific pattern of the temperature spikes. If you look at her chart, her temperature would rise progressively each evening. Let's say it goes up to 101 degrees.
Okay.
By the morning, it drops slightly, maybe down to 100.
So you think you're getting better?
Right, but the next evening, it spikes to 102. The morning after, it drops to 101.
Ah, I see.
The baseline maintains the steady upward trend over several days, literally resembling steps on a ladder.
That's wild. What causes the body to do that? Is the bacteria like taking breaks during the day?
No, it has to do with the cycle of the bacteria replicating within the host's immune cells.
Okay.
It periodically bursts out into the bloodstream, a process called bacteremia. And the body's immune system detects this massive release of pathogens and releases pyrogens.
Pyrogens.
Yeah, they are chemicals that tell the hypothalamus in the brain to raise the core temperature. It's trying to cook the bacteria alive, basically.
Wow.
So that daily cycle of bacterial release, followed by the immune system's chemical response, that creates that specific stepping pattern.
Okay, so the local doctor in Hindupur sees this stepladder fever, looks at the severe gastrointestinal distress, and, makes a completely logical deduction.
Yes, very logical for that region.
The doctor suspects enteric fever, which we commonly know as typhoid. So they order a standard diagnostic tool called a Whittle test, and it comes back positive for Salmonella typhi.
Right. And up to this moment, the clinical narrative follows a very standard, predictable script for an endemic region.
Right. Nothing out of the ordinary yet.
Exactly. But then the timeline accelerates in a way that is utterly terrifying.
Yeah, this is the crazy part.
Within just 3 days of her illness taking hold, she developed pyelonephritis.
Pyelonephritis. Let's break that term down for a second.
Sure. Pyelonephritis is a severe ascending bacterial infection of the kidneys.
Okay.
Pyelo refers to the renal pelvis. That's the funnel-like dilated part of the ureter in the kidney. And nephritis means inflammation of the kidneys.
So the bacteria had aggressively traveled up the urinary tract and was actively destroying renal tissue.
Yes, exactly.
And this is where the alarm bells really start ringing. Because, if I have a bacterial infection spreading through my body, why wouldn't it hit my kidneys? Why is this such a massive anomaly for the doctors looking at the data?
Simply because Salmonella typhi does not operate on that timetable.
Is it too fast?
Way too fast. To grasp the anomaly, we have to look at the established clinical history of typhoid.
Right.
Normally, if a patient is going to develop severe, life-threatening complications like the bowel tearing open from ulceration or overwhelming systemic shock, those events take time to build.
The bacteria needs time to replicate.
Exactly. It needs time to hide and cause enough structural damage. Those major complications typically happen in the 3rd week of the illness.
Week 3, so roughly 21 days after the onset of symptoms.
Correct. Developing a deep, tissue-destroying kidney infection by day 3. That is clinically unprecedented for standard typhoid.
Unprecedented.
Yeah.
So the bacteria didn't just break the rules, it completely rewrote the playbook.
It really did.
Think of it like a burglar. Normally, this specific burglar sneaks quietly through the back door, spends 3 weeks carefully picking the locks on your safe, making sure no alarms go off.
Right.
But in Hindupur, this burglar blew the roof off the house with dynamite on day 1.
That analogy captures the sudden violence of the pathogenesis perfectly. The rapid onset of pyelonephritis signals immediately that you are dealing with a highly resistant, atypical, hypervirulent strain.
It's basically flashing a giant warning sign.
Yes. It tells the medical observer that the bacteria is incredibly aggressive. It is shedding into the urinary tract far earlier than it ever should.
And the drugs aren't working.
Right. Whatever standard first-line antibiotics the local clinic might have prescribed are completely failing to suppress its replication.
But wait, this brings up a huge logistical question for me. If this local clinic is just doing standard tests, and if the typical reporting system in a rural area is sluggish, which, often takes weeks to collate data and send it up to regional health ministries, how did anyone even catch this anomaly so fast?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah, how did Dr. Srivatsa, who isn't the attending physician in that specific clinic, get his hands on this data in real time to realize the roof had just been blown off?
It reveals a massive vulnerability in our global surveillance systems, to be honest, because we only know about this case in real time due to an incredible, almost absurd stroke of luck.
Luck.
Yes. It came down to a personal family connection. The patient from Hindupur happens to have a brother who works as an app developer.
And he just happens to be working on healthcare apps. I mean, what are the odds?
Even more specific than that, he is actively involved in the development network for the Dr. Maya AI system.
The very system Dr. Srivatsa is building.
Exactly. Now consider the patient's situation. She is critically ill, and according to the sources, she cannot speak English or Standard Kannada fluently.
Okay, so a language barrier on top of everything.
A huge one. She speaks a local dialect, making it incredibly difficult for her to navigate the complex medical bureaucracy or even advocate for herself when her condition rapidly deteriorated.
So her brother sees her kidneys failing, realizes the local clinic is completely out at its depth, and he bypasses the entire official medical reporting chain.
He bypassed it entirely. Instead of waiting for the clinic to file paperwork, which could take forever, he took the raw clinical data.
Like the charts.
Yeah, the fever charts, the timeline of the vomiting, the sudden onset of the pyelonephritis, and he manually inputted that clinical picture directly into the developer backend of the Dr. Maya AI system.
Wow.
He was reaching out to the network, and by extension, Dr. Srivatsa, in just a desperate plea for guidance.
And the moment that data hit the AI, Dr. Srivatsa essentially saw a neon red flash on his radar.
The AI processed the timeline and flagged the pathogenesis shift immediately.
It saw the day 3 kidney failure.
Right. Dr. Srivatsa noted in the documentation that in 50 years of clinical experience, he had never encountered pyelonephritis caused solely by Salmonella typhi this early in the disease progression.
50 years. That really puts it in perspective.
It was a horrifying realization of what this specific strain of bacteria had evolved into.
To really understand the horror of a day 3 kidney infection and, why Dr. Srivatsa reacted the way he did, we have to zoom out from this one hospital bed in Hindupur.
We need to look at the biology.
Right. We have to look at the biology of the enemy. We have to dive into the pathogen's playbook.
Right.
What makes Salmonella typhi tick?
Let's examine the biology of Salmonella enterica serovar typhi.
Okay.
The absolute foundational fact about this bacteria, the thing that dictates everything about how it spreads, is its transmission route. It is exclusively fecal-oral.
Which is exactly as brutal as it sounds. I mean, it means a new host literally has to ingest food or water that has been contaminated by the microscopic feces or urine of an actively infected person.
Yes, it highlights a profound vulnerability in human infrastructure.
Definitely.
Furthermore, unlike many other pathogens like, say, avian flu, which hides in birds, or Ebola, which has animal reservoirs, humans are the only known reservoir for Salmonella typhi.
We are its only home.
Exactly. It does not live in the soil. It does not live in livestock. Every single case of typhoid on Earth is the direct result of human-to-human transmission.
It's a disease inextricably linked to sanitation, to clean drinking water, and to how humans interact with their environment.
Very much so.
So let's trace the journey. Let's say someone ingests contaminated water. The bacteria enters the stomach. How does it even survive that?
That's a great question.
Because the human stomach is basically a vat of hydrochloric acid designed to melt down food and kill invaders.
It is, but Salmonella typhi is a master of biochemical evasion.
How does it evade acid?
It possesses an incredible mechanism known as the acid tolerance response.
Okay.
When it detects the extreme drop in pH as it enters the stomach, it rapidly synthesizes a specific set of proteins.
Like armor.
Basically. These proteins act as a shield, protecting its internal cellular machinery from the acid just long enough to pass through into the much friendlier alkaline environment of the small intestine.
Unbelievable. So it survives the acid bath. Where does it go next?
It targets a very specific region called the terminal ileum. That's the last part of the small intestine.
Right.
And it doesn't just bump into the walls. It actively searches for mucosal immune checkpoints.
Checkpoints.
Yeah, the lining of your intestine has these specialized areas of lymphoid tissue called Peyer's patches.
Hold on, Peyer's patches. Are those part of the physical wall of the intestine, or are they immune cells?
They are clusters of immune tissue embedded in the wall. Think of them as the security guards or the security checkpoints of your gut.
Okay, I'm with you.
Their job is to sample whatever is flowing past, identify threats, and trigger an immune response.
So the bacteria is intentionally walking right up to the security guards.
Yeah.
That seems, well, suicidal.
It would be for a normal bacteria, but Salmonella typhi has evolved to exploit the security system.
How?
It uses specialized proteins to force the cells covering the Peyer's patches to essentially swallow it whole.
Oh.
It forces its own entry through the mucosal barrier. And once it breaches that wall, it encounters the heavy artillery of the immune system,
Right.
the submucosal macrophages.
Macrophages.
Right. These are massive white blood cells whose entire biological purpose is to engulf, digest, and destroy foreign invaders.
But let me guess, the bacteria actually wants to be eaten by the macrophage.
It absolutely relies on it.
That is so sinister.
When the macrophage engulfs the bacteria, it traps it in an internal compartment. And then it attempts to flood that compartment with toxic enzymes and reactive oxygen species to dissolve it.
But the bacteria survives.
It does. It deploys its ultimate defense mechanism.
Well,
A specialized polysaccharide capsule known as the V antigen.
the Vi antigen, what does that actually do? Is it like physical armor?
It acts like a biochemical cloaking device and a blast shield combined.
A blast shield.
The Vi antigen prevents the macrophage's toxic enzymes from actually binding to the bacteria.
Okay.
Furthermore, the bacteria releases effector proteins that literally rewrite the macrophage's internal signaling.
It rewrites the cell.
Yes. It shuts down the macrophage's ability to call for backup.
So the macrophage eats the bacteria, fails to digest it, and is now flying completely blind.
Exactly. The macrophage basically becomes a Trojan horse.
Wow.
Salmonella typhi survives and begins to rapidly replicate inside the very cell that was meant to destroy it.
Completely hidden from the rest of the immune system.
Completely shielded. And then it rides inside these circulating macrophages through the lymphatic system, dumps into the bloodstream, and begins seeding the body's major filtration organs.
Which organs?
The liver, the spleen, the bone marrow, and most dangerously, the gallbladder.
The gallbladder. Why is the gallbladder so dangerous? Why does the bacteria want to end up there of all places?
Because the gallbladder acts as the ultimate sanctuary site.
The sanctuary.
The immune system has a very difficult time clearing infections from the gallbladder. The bacteria replicates extensively in the bile there.
Okay.
And here is the dark genius of its life cycle. The gallbladder constantly empties bile back into the intestine to help digest fats.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. So the bacteria replicates in the gallbladder, dumps back into the intestine, and starts the cycle all over again.
Meaning the host just keeps shedding the bacteria.
Exactly. Ensuring the host sheds billions of bacteria in their feces to infect the next person.
So this stealthy, complex journey from the stomach through the immune system to the gallbladder, this is what dictates that classic 4-week timeline we talked about earlier.
Yes, that slow buildup.
Let's walk through that standard schedule, because understanding the normal pace really makes the Hindupur anomaly even more terrifying.
Okay, so in a classic untreated case, week 1 is the insidious prodrome.
The silent phase.
Yes, this is when the bacteria is silently multiplying inside the macrophages. You get that stepladder fever, a severe headache, general fatigue, and maybe a dry cough.
But then week 2 is when things get visible.
Yes, week 2 is the full febrile syndrome. The fever plateaus at a dangerous 39 or 40 degrees Celsius over 102 Fahrenheit.
That's high.
Yeah, very high. The patient experiences the classic pea soup diarrhea, and they might develop faint pink lesions on their chest, an abdomen known as rose spots.
Rose spots?
Yeah, which are actually tiny bacterial emboli in the skin.
Gross. And then week 3, the crisis.
Week 3 is known as the typhoid state.
Okay.
The patient becomes apathetic, delirious, sometimes slipping into a coma. Because the bacteria has been continuously reseeding the intestine from the gallbladder, those pyre patches we talked about become heavily inflamed.
The security checkpoints.
Right. They become ulcerated and necrotic. The tissue actually dies.
Ah, man.
This is when the intestinal wall can literally perforate, tear open, spilling highly infectious intestinal contents directly into the sterile abdominal cavity.
Which is a death sentence without surgery.
Without immediate surgical intervention, the mortality rate is exceptionally high.
So if we look back at our 34-year-old patient in Hindupur, she skipped the entire Trojan horse stealth phase and leaped straight to a week 3 level of severe organ-destroying complication by day 3.
Yes. Her kidneys were under siege almost immediately.
Which tells Dr. Srivatsa that the bacteria has fundamentally evolved. It has gained terrifying speed.
And to understand how it gained that power, we have to confront the antimicrobial resistance context.
AMR.
The AMR history of typhoid is categorized into 3 distinct eras of resistance, and honestly, it is a masterclass in human failure.
Okay, let's trace this failure. Because standard antibiotics used to work fine for typhoid, right? Like if I caught it in, say, 1980, I'd just take a pill and be fine.
Generally, yes.
What broke down in the biology between then and now? Let's start with Era 1.
Era 1 spans the 1970s through the 1990s. For a long time, typhoid was reliably treated with classical first-line antibiotics, chloramphenicol, ampicillin, and cotrimoxazole.
Okay, chloramphenicol.
Chloramphenicol, for instance, works by binding to the bacterial ribosome.
And that does what?
It physically blocks it from synthesizing the proteins it needs to survive.
It jams the machinery. So how did the bacteria beat it?
It acquired resistance genes that allowed it to produce specific enzymes.
Like a countermeasure?
Exactly, like chloramphenicol acetyltransferase. This enzyme literally intercepts the antibiotic and modifies its chemical structure so it can no longer bind to the ribosome.
It disarms the drug.
Yes. By the late 1980s, multi-drug resistant, or MDR, strains emerged that had the genetic tools to neutralize all three of those first-line drugs.
Wow. We lost our first weapons entirely, so the medical community had to pivot.
This ushers in Era 2, from the 2000s up to around 2016.
What did we use then?
The medical community shifted to a new class of weapons, fluoroquinolones, primarily a highly effective drug called ciprofloxacin.
Ciprofloxacin. How does ciprofloxacin attack the bacteria?
It's fascinating, actually. When a bacteria replicates, it has to unwind its tightly coiled DNA to copy it.
Okay.
It uses an enzyme called DNA gyrase to manage that unwinding. Ciprofloxacin binds to that enzyme, locking the DNA in a fractured state.
Oh, wow.
It causes the bacteria to literally shred its own genome and die. It was incredibly effective.
But the sources indicate we completely ruined it.
We overused it catastrophically. Ciprofloxacin was prescribed empirically for almost any undifferentiated fever in South Asia for a decade.
Just handing it out like candy.
Basically. And every time you expose a bacterial population to an antibiotic, you kill the weak ones, sure, but you exert immense selective pressure.
Right. Survival of the fittest.
The rare bacteria that happen to have a random chromosomal mutation, they survive.
What kind of mutation are we talking about here?
The bacteria mutated the actual shape of the DNA gyrase enzyme just enough so that the ciprofloxacin molecule could no longer physically dock into it.
It changed the lock.
But the enzyme could still unwind the DNA. We forced the bacteria to adapt its own structural biology.
That is terrifying.
By the time the sources were compiled, resistance to ciprofloxacin in some populations exceeded 96%.
96%.
Yes.
So if you hand a patient ciprofloxacin today for typhoid, you are essentially handing them a breath mint. It does nothing to the bacteria.
But the data shows it is actually worse than useless.
Worse.
Because it gives the patient and the doctor a false sense of security. The patient thinks they're being treated while they continue to shed the pathogen and infect their community.
I see. Which brings us to Era 3, the present day.
Era 3 begins around 2016. In Sindh province, Pakistan, an extensively drug-resistant, or XDR, clone of Solmonella typhi emerged.
XDR, meaning it's resistant to what exactly?
Almost everything.
Right.
It is resistant to the Era 1 drugs, and it is resistant to fluoroquinolones. But the terrifying leap in Era 3 is how it acquired this resistance.
It wasn't just a mutation.
No, it didn't just slowly mutate, it acquired a plasmid.
A plasmid. I want to make sure I understand plasmids. If the chromosome is the bacteria's core instruction manual, what is a plasmid?
Think of a plasmid as a supplementary, highly mobile instruction booklet that bacteria can pass between each other.
Like a cheat code.
Exactly. It's a small, circular ring of DNA. Bacteria can engage in a process called horizontal gene transfer.
What does that mean?
Two completely different species of bacteria can physically connect and trade these plasmids like trading cards.
Wait, so an entirely different harmless bacteria in your gut could have figured out how to beat an antibiotic, and it just hands the blueprint over to the typhoid bacteria.
Precisely.
That is insane.
This XDR clone acquired a specific plasmid, the INCY plasmid, that carried the genetic blueprint to destroy third-generation cephalosporins, which were our backup weapons.
So it leveled up instantly.
Suddenly, this highly mobile, extensively resistant strain spread across 6 continents. Treatment options were progressively restricted to just oral azithromycin.
And if that doesn't work?
For the most severe, life-threatening cases, the absolute last resort intravenous antibiotics known as carbapenems.
Carbapenems, which brings us to the 2024 crisis explicitly mentioned in the sources.
The absolute nightmare scenario for infectious disease doctors.
Tell me about it.
The sources highlight a critical turning point in 2024. A strain of Salmonella typhi was isolated from a traveler returning from India to Germany. When researchers analyzed this strain, they discovered it carried the blandium 5 gene.
Blendium-5, what does that gene actually do? Is it more armor?
It is an active weapon.
A weapon.
Carbapenem antibiotics work by utilizing a specific chemical structure called a beta-lactam ring to interfere with the bacteria building its cell wall.
Okay, so it stops them from building walls.
The Blendium-5 gene contains the instructions for the bacteria to manufacture an enzyme called New Delhi metallo-beta-lactamase.
That's a mouthful.
This enzyme specifically hunts down the antibiotic and uses a zinc ion to literally cut the beta-lactam ring open.
It destroys the drug before it can work.
It completely neutralizes the drug before it can touch the cell wall.
The last resort failed.
The last resort was chemically shredded. This strain from the German traveler was resistant to carbapenems, all the cephalosporins, the fluoroquinolones, everything.
Everything.
It signals the very real prospect of a completely untreatable strain of typhoid circulating globally.
And if we connect this terrifying 2024 German traveler case back to our 34-year-old woman in Hindupur.
Yes, so let's go back to her.
If she has a strain that is behaving this aggressively on day 3, and if it carries these resistance genes, what does that mean for the physical community around her? What happens to her village?
This is where the public health documents point us to mathematical modeling.
Oh, okay.
The sources cite a model derived from a massive typhoid outbreak in Blantyre, Malawi.
What did that model show?
That model demonstrated a deeply counterintuitive fact. The strongest predictor of an explosive, uncontrollable epidemic isn't just the population density of the city.
What is it then?
The primary driver is prolonged infectiousness.
Prolonged infectiousness.
Prolonged infectiousness.
Right.
Because the drugs fail, so the patient stays sick longer.
Exactly. If a patient is given an antibiotic that doesn't work, which happens constantly because the local doctor doesn't realize the strain is resistant, the patient obviously doesn't get better. Right. But from a public health perspective, the disaster is that they keep shedding billions of bacteria in their feces and urine for weeks on end.
They become an unchecked amplifier. Yes. Because they feel sick but aren't hospitalized immediately, they might still be interacting with their family, using shared latrines, preparing food.
Oh, preparing food. That's a nightmare.
The transmission becomes geometric. One person infects 3, who infect 9, who infect 27.
So, when Dr. Srivatsa is looking at his computer screen, seeing that day 3 kidney infection uploaded by the developer brother, he isn't just looking at a medical anomaly for a journal article.
No, not at all.
He is looking at the spark that could burn down the whole forest.
He realized that if local doctors continued to treat her, and the people she had inevitably already infected during her 48-hour delay with standard antibiotics, those drugs would fail.
And the shedding would just continue.
The shedding would continue unimpeded, and an explosive outbreak of a hyper-virulent, untreatable superbug was days away from overwhelming the region.
And that realization is what triggers the immediate response. Dr. Srivatsa doesn't wait for the official hospital data to slowly trickle up through the local health board.
He couldn't wait.
Right. Getting filed in a regional office, eventually landing on a minister's desk weeks later, he bypasses the bureaucracy completely.
He had no choice. The biological speed of the pathogen demands a speed of response that traditional, paper-based bureaucracies simply do not possess.
So what did he do?
He immediately ran all the clinical data provided by the brother through the Dr. Maya AI system.
Okay.
The AI synthesized the symptoms, the incredibly compressed timeline, the epidemiological context of the region, and the known resistance patterns.
And it generated a report.
It generated a comprehensive, actionable medical report.
He also authored a detailed article laying out the implications of the case, right?
Yes.
And then who does he send this to?
He hit send on direct emails to public health officials at the highest levels.
Wow.
He alerted officials in New Delhi, across the state of Andhra Pradesh, where Hindupur is located, and in the neighboring state of Karnataka.
His message is essentially like, you have a confirmed case with a highly anomalous complication. This strongly suggests a drug-resistant, hypervirulent strain is actively circulating.
Exactly. You need to remain vigilant, you need to alert every local doctor in your network immediately, and you must implement severe infection control protocols to prevent further spread.
We have to understand the specific reason he felt this urgency to alert the clinicians directly, though.
Yes, it wasn't just about awareness. It was about stopping them from making a fatal diagnostic mistake.
Right. Remember, the local doctor in Hindupur used a Whittle test to confirm the typhoid.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier that the Whittle test came back positive. That sounds like a success for the local clinic.
Mm.
Why does Dr. Srivatsa view that as a massive problem?
Because a single Whittle test is practically useless and often dangerous in an endemic area.
Really, why?
Let's look at the mechanics of the test. The Whittle test does not look for the actual Salmonella typhi bacteria.
It doesn't.
No, it looks for antibodies, the immune system's memory of fighting the bacteria.
Okay, so if it finds antibodies, doesn't that mean the bacteria is there?
Not necessarily. If you live in an area where typhoid is common, your body might have antibodies from an infection you had 3 years ago.
Oh, I see.
The test will show positive. Furthermore, the test is notorious for cross-reactivity.
Cross-reactivity.
If you are currently infected with a completely different pathogen, like malaria or dengue fever, your immune system's response can trick the Whittle test into showing a false positive for typhoid.
Oh, man. Which creates a disastrous scenario.
Extremely disastrous.
A patient comes in with dengue fever. The doctor runs a Whittle test, gets a false positive for typhoid. The doctor prescribes ciprofloxacin, which does nothing for dengue, and wouldn't even work on modern typhoid anyway.
Exactly.
The patient goes home with a false sense of security, their condition worsens, and they continue to spread whatever they actually have.
Precisely. Dr. Srivatsa's alert was desperately trying to retrain the ground-level clinicians in real time.
He was trying to stop the false positives.
He was telling them, do not trust the Whittle test. You must perform blood cultures.
Blood cultures, how are they different?
A blood culture actually grows the live bacteria in a lab, allowing doctors to test exactly which antibiotics can kill that specific strain.
So it's definitive.
It is. He was warning them to assume extreme resistance and to prepare to use 5-azithromycin or carbapenems immediately.
Assuming those last resort drugs even still work against this new strain.
Exactly, assuming they even work.
But this brings us to a glaring systemic flaw. Dr. Srivatsa acted as a human early warning radar.
He did.
He saw the anomaly, interpreted the data, and sent the flare-up. If he hadn't sent those emails, the official system would have just logged this as another random kidney infection.
They would have been completely blind.
Blind to the outbreak until the regional hospitals were physically overflowing with septic patients.
The current paradigm relies entirely on lagging indicators. It relies on counting the severe cases only after they breach the hospital doors.
But we only caught this leading indicator because the patient's brother was building the app.
I know, it's crazy.
You cannot base a national defense strategy for a country of 1.4 billion people on the miraculous hope that the next patient zero happens to be related to a software developer who has Dr. Srivatsa's direct contact info.
You've isolated the core vulnerability perfectly. You can't rely on luck.
No, you can't.
And that is exactly the conclusion Dr. Srivatsa reached. He realized that this real-time, ground-level data collection catching the symptoms at hour 48 instead of week 3 shouldn't be a lucky accident.
It needs to be the standard.
It needs to become hardwired infrastructure.
Which leads us to the ultimate vision presented in these documents. The proposed Power One product.
The Prima kiosk.
Yes, the Prima kiosk, powered by Dr. Maya AI.
Prima. It is an acronym standing for Personal, Responsive, Empowering Medical Assistance.
Okay, so Prima.
This kiosk is Dr. Srivatsa's comprehensive systemic solution to the terrifying gaps we just witnessed in the Hindenburg case.
Let's visualize this for a second. What exactly is a Prima kiosk? If I travel to a rural village in India, what am I actually looking at in the town square?
The physical design is crucial to its function. Imagine the modern, highly advanced successor to the classic public telephone booth.
Like a phone booth. Got it.
It is a standalone physical terminal. It is heavily ruggedized and weatherproof to withstand harsh environments.
Because it's outside.
Right, but the most important engineering feats are its power and connectivity specifications.
How is it powered?
It does not rely on the local power grid. It is designed to be solar-powered or battery-operated.
Oh, that's smart.
And it does not require constant high-speed internet connection to perform its core triage functions.
So it's offline.
It is fully offline capable.
The offline capability seems vital. I mean, if a monsoon knocks out the power lines or the local cell tower goes down, you can't have your primary healthcare triage system suddenly brick itself.
Exactly. The infrastructure must be resilient. It is designed specifically as a piece of permanent street furniture for healthcare.
Accessible all the time.
Accessible 24/7 right in the heart of the community.
Okay, let's walk through the user journey. Let's take our patient from Hindupur. Imagine it's day 1. She has the bloody diarrhea, the vomiting, the fever.
Okay.
Instead of waiting 48 hours at home, she walks up to the Prima kiosk in her village. How does she actually interact with it?
The interface is driven by a highly sophisticated yet deceptively simple color-coded symptom logic.
Color-coded.
Yes. The user interacts directly with the AI, Dr. Maya, primarily through voice. The AI asks the user to describe what they are feeling.
Just naturally.
Yes. And it is very important to note that it does not ask for a diagnosis. It doesn't expect the user to say, I have enteric fever.
Right. It just asks for raw symptoms.
Exactly.
So she says, like, my stomach is in agony, I have a fever that gets worse at night, and I'm throwing up.
The AI receives those inputs and analyzes the symptom combinations against massive clinical ontologies. If it detects a pattern that strongly suggests a communicable disease, like the combination of stepladder fever and severe mucosal gastrointestinal distress, it flags the interaction internally as a blue pattern.
Blue.
In the system's logic, blue indicates a potential infection risk requiring specific protocols.
But we established a massive hurdle earlier. The patient in Hindupur couldn't speak standard English or standard Kannada. She spoke a highly localized dialect.
Right.
If she speaks to a machine in an unwritten dialect, how does the AI not just completely hallucinate or fail to understand?
This is perhaps the most powerful technological feature of the entire system. The kiosk incorporates a deep translation layer.
How many languages?
It's capable of handling over 30 different languages and, critically, local rural dialects.
Let's dig into the tech on that. How do you map a non-standard rural dialect to standard clinical data? The AI doesn't just need to translate the words. It has to translate the clinical intent behind local slang for a stomachache.
It utilizes advanced acoustic modeling rather than just standard text-based large language models.
Acoustic modeling.
It analyzes the phonemes, the actual sounds of the local dialect, and maps those directly to clinical concepts.
Right.
So a patient can walk up to the machine, distressed, and speak entirely in their highly specific local dialect.
And it just understands.
The AI translates that audio input into standardized medical text, processes the symptom logic, formulates the appropriate medical response, and then uses text-to-speech to speak the advice back out loud to the patient in that exact same local dialect.
That is incredible. That fundamentally alters the landscape of healthcare access. It shatters the literacy and language barriers that keep millions of people isolated from accurate medical information.
It creates a completely frictionless point of entry. But, and this is crucial, the documents are incredibly rigorous about establishing a vital legal and medical boundary regarding what the AI does with that information.
Right. We need to emphasize what this kiosk does not do.
Exactly.
Because medical AI is a highly controversial space. The Prima kiosk does not diagnose the patient, and it does not prescribe medication.
No, it does not.
It does not analyze the stepladder fever and declare, you have typhoid, here is a digital prescription for azithromycin.
That boundary is absolutely non-negotiable. If an AI hallucinates a diagnosis or prescribes the wrong antibiotic, the liability is massive and the patient could die.
Right, you can't have an AI practicing medicine.
Exactly. What the kiosk provides is triage.
Triage, meaning sorting and prioritizing.
Exactly. It provides immediate, highly accurate, clinically validated advice on what the patient must do next based on their computed risk level.
So it tells you where to go.
Yes. Should they simply rest and isolate at home with hydration? Should they visit a local pharmacist for symptom relief? Or, in the case of our Hindupur patient, is this a severe red flag situation where the AI advises them to bypass the local clinic entirely and rush to the regional hospital emergency room immediately?
Think about the impact of that triage on the Hindupur timeline.
It changes everything.
If that woman had consulted the Prima kiosk on day one, she wouldn't have spent those critical 48 hours sitting at home.
Shedding the pathogen.
It's exactly. Potentially infecting her family while hoping it would just pass. The kiosk would have recognized the severity of the bleed pattern symptoms immediately.
And it would have told her.
It would have told her in her own dialect, your symptoms require immediate medical escalation, and you must isolate yourself from your family right now.
It directly neutralizes that 48-hour delay. By catching the symptoms early and issuing immediate isolation advice, you instantly break the chain of transmission.
Right at the source.
The epidemiological data strongly suggests that immediate targeted isolation can stop a massive percentage of community transmission before it even reaches a geometric growth phase.
And it also calms people down.
Yes. Furthermore, the kiosk gives the patient verified, calm information, which prevents panic.
And panic is the psychological engine driving the AMR crisis. When people panic about a fever, they run to the local pharmacy, demand antibiotics for what might just be a viral infection, and the overuse continues.
The kiosk provides clarity, which directly reduces irrational, panic-driven medicine use.
That's brilliant.
Now, if we pull back and look at the philosophical framework behind this system, the sources draw a really fascinating historical comparison.
What's the comparison?
The documents align Dr. Srivatsa's approach with the kiosk to the legacy of Florence Nightingale.
Florence Nightingale, the famous nurse from the Crimean War.
Yes.
How does an offline AI kiosk connect to 19th century nursing?
It connects through the fundamental philosophy of public health intervention. Florence Nightingale didn't just walk into the hospital wards at Scutari and focus solely on treating the dying soldiers.
What did she do?
She looked at the catastrophic mortality rates and realized the environment itself, the system, was killing them.
So she changed the environment.
She radically redesigned the environment. She focused on sanitation, ensuring adequate physical spacing between beds, improving ventilation, and managing waste.
Prevention.
Exactly. She focused on preventing the spread of infection through environmental engineering before antibiotics even existed.
She recognized that you can't out-treat a bad environment. You have to subsidize your medical interventions with preventative design.
And Dr. Srivatsa is executing the exact same philosophy, but tailored for the post-antibiotic era.
Because the antibiotics are failing.
He recognizes that our current pharmaceutical tools, the antibiotics we have relied on for a century, are failing.
Right.
So instead of pouring resources exclusively into building bigger hospitals to treat people once they're already dying of untreatable sepsis, he is pushing the intelligence out into the environment.
Out into the villages.
He is placing kiosks in the villages to prioritize early detection, immediate isolation, and behavior modification.
That makes total sense.
He is building infrastructure to prevent the fire from starting, rather than desperately trying to invent better water to put it out once the house is already engulfed.
Which brings us to the logistics of actually building that infrastructure.
Oh, sure.
Because a vision this comprehensive requires national scale.
Yes, it's massive.
Dr. Srivatsa isn't looking to build a few cool tech demos to show off at a conference. He is trying to build a national defense system. We need to look at the pitch to the Prime Minister.
The business plan detailed in the sources is a direct, metric-driven appeal designed to motivate India's Prime Minister and Health Minister.
Okay, what's the ask?
The financial ask is highly specific, a 500 crore rupee allocation.
500 crore. That translates to roughly 60 million US dollars.
Correct. That initial investment is targeted to deploy 50,000 Prima kiosks directly into rural primary health centers across the country.
50,000 kiosks.
And the long-term vision scales up significantly. By 2030, the goal is to have 100,000 kiosks operational nationwide.
The metrics attached to that 2030 goal are staggering too.
They really are.
The documents project that this network would serve 100 million Indians. By providing accurate triage and preventing panic buying, they project it will prevent 10 million unnecessary antibiotic courses.
And ultimately,
the goal is to save 50,000 lives directly from antimicrobial resistance complications.
it is a massive scale of intervention. But to achieve that scale, we have to talk about the economics.
But who pays for it?
Exactly. You cannot simply drop 100,000 highly technical machines into rural Indian villages and expect them to magically maintain themselves. How does this system actually survive financially in the real world?
This is where the documents offer a heavy critique of the current Silicon Valley big tech approach to global healthcare.
Oh yeah, they tear it apart.
Most health tech startups build app-based solutions. They build a sleek app, put it on a store, and assume the end user has a modern smartphone, a reliable 5G internet connection, and the digital literacy to navigate a complex interface.
And the sources point out the fatal flaw in that assumption. It ignores roughly 760 million Indians who do not have smartphones or consistent internet access.
760 million people.
Yes. Building a smartphone-only solution writes off half the country's population, usually the half most vulnerable to infectious disease, before the product even launches.
Prima is engineered specifically for that invisible half. And the economic model keeping it running is brilliantly grassroots. Using the kiosk for a triage session costs the user about 100 rupees.
Which is roughly the price of a cup of coffee.
Very affordable.
It is an extremely affordable price point for a medical consultation.
But the true genius is where that 100 rupees goes. These kiosks are not owned and operated by some massive, faceless tech conglomerate sitting in a tower in Bangalore collecting microtransactions.
No, they are not.
They're designed to be owned and run by local community members. The plan envisions local chemists, poor mothers, or street vendors stepping up to act as the kiosk operators.
It actively creates a microeconomy within the village. It empowers the community by giving them a financial stake in public health.
So they make money from it.
The local operator earns a direct income from the kiosk usage fees.
The business plan breaks the math down. The initial investment to build and install a single kiosk is about 2.5 lakh rupees.
Which is around $3,000.
The modeling calculates that based on the 100 rupee usage fee, the kiosk pays back its initial investment incredibly rapidly, sometimes within days or weeks depending on the local foot traffic.
And after that,
After that break-even point, it generates a steady monthly income for the local operator that is estimated to be 3 times higher than the regional minimum wage.
consider the sociological impact of that. The local operator now has a vested, powerful financial interest in keeping the machines safe from vandalism,
It protected.
keeping it powered, keeping it clean, and actively encouraging their neighbors to use it when they feel sick.
It transforms a piece of technology into self-sustaining, community-protected public health infrastructure.
It's a community-owned public health economy. But as with any radical shift that threatens the status quo, this proposal faces massive systemic resistance.
Naturally.
The documents outline a very clear fundamental dilemma facing the Indian government. It is the tension between their own internal institutional systems, known as SAI and BODH, versus Dr. Srivatsa's decentralized PRIMA model.
We need to unpack that government dilemma. So SHE stands for Strategy for Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare for India, and BODH is a parallel framework.
Right.
These represent the traditional, highly institutionalized approach to medical technology. They inherently prefer top-down, highly structured, doctor-centric algorithms.
Exactly.
Why does the government vastly prefer the top-down approach?
It fundamentally comes down to liability and safety.
They don't want to get sued.
The government is understandably terrified of an AI system making a mistake out in the wild. They want systems that keep the ultimate liability, the oversight, and the final decision-making power strictly within the confines of a hospital supervised by a human doctor.
They want control.
They want to ensure the system is functionally perfect and completely risk-free before it is ever deployed to the public.
But this is where the logic hits a wall for me.
How so?
The pushback against Dr. Maya AI is that trusting an AI with triage out in a rural village is too risky.
Yeah.
But let's look at the baseline we are comparing it to.
The current system.
Right. The current system waiting for patients to show up at hospitals with failing kidneys has a 100% failure rate for the 10 million people projected to die of AMR globally every year.
That's a staggering number.
Isn't waiting for a perfect, liability-free, institutionally approved system a luxury we literally do not have? People are bleeding internally and shedding untreatable superbugs right now, while the bureaucracy demands absolute perfection.
That is the precise counter-argument Dr. Srivatsa is making. The institutional systems like SAI are inherently reactive.
Because they wait for the hospital admissions.
Because they rely on doctors and hospitals to input the data, they only detect an outbreak after the hospital admissions begin to spike.
Right.
They only see the problem when our Hindupur patient shows up in critical condition on day 3, long after she has spent 48 hours infecting her community.
It's the equivalent of trying to fight a forest fire by only counting the ashes of the trees that have already burned down.
What a perfect analogy. PRIMA, conversely, is proactive. It detects the smoke.
But implementing it requires a leap of faith.
Yes. Trusting the community to operate the machines and trusting the AI to perform triage safely outside the hospital walls.
So how does this resolve? Is it a winner-take-all situation? Does the government have to abandon their SACI framework to adopt the PRIMA model?
Not at all. The synthesis presented in the documents is that these two approaches are absolutely not mutually exclusive.
Well, they can work together.
In fact, for a national defense system to work, they desperately need each other. The government frameworks, SAHI and BODH, can and should provide the necessary governance.
Meaning what?
They can provide the ethical oversight, the legal frameworks, and the rigorous testing parameters to ensure the AI's symptom logic doesn't hallucinate or give dangerous advice.
They provide the guardrails and the institutional weight.
Correct. While PRIMA provides the raw, immediate grassroots data that the government bureaucracy currently lacks entirely.
Oh, I see.
The document uses a brilliant analogy to describe this relationship. It says PRIMA acts as a Santa tracker for disease patterns.
A Santa tracker. I love that image. It means you can open a dashboard and see exactly where the clusters of symptoms are lighting up on the map in real time.
Yes, the government doesn't need to know the specific identity of the patient in Hindupur.
They just need the numbers.
The system just needs to securely transmit the data that 50 people in one specific rural zip code suddenly reported a stepladder fever and bloody diarrhea on a Tuesday.
And then the government can act.
The government can then use their top-down, heavy resources to deploy mobile testing units, antibiotics, and containment teams directly to that specific village before the outbreak ever reaches the regional hospital.
It combines the safety and power of institutional governance with the incredible speed and reach of decentralized grassroots technology. It creates a literal nervous system for public health.
It is a profound paradigm shift.
This has been an incredibly intense journey. We started at ground zero, witnessing the terrifying 72-hour escalation of an untreatable antibiotic-resistant superbug shutting down the kidneys of a 34-year-old woman in Hindupur,
And we dove deep into the biology of Salmonella typhi.
tracing its stealthy journey from the stomach acid through the immune system's pear patches to its sanctuary in the gallbladder.
We examined how human failure over 3 eras of antibiotic overuse forced the bacteria to evolve,
Acquiring plasmids and genes like bland-EM5 that literally shred our last resort antibiotics.
creating the perfect conditions for geometric, uncontrollable epidemics.
We saw how Dr. Srivatsa utilized the Dr. Maya AI system to catch that Hindupur anomaly through a developer backend, allowing him to bypass a sluggish bureaucracy and sound the alarm across 3 states.
And finally, we explored the massive vision of the Prima kiosk.
A solar-powered, offline, multilingual terminal owned by the community designed to democratize early detection, break the chain of transmission through immediate isolation advice, and fundamentally change how a nation of 1.4 billion people interacts with healthcare.
It is a radical, comprehensive proposal to shift our entire medical philosophy from reacting to disease to preventing its spread at the absolute source.
Now, if you were listening to this on your commute or while walking your dog, you might be thinking, well, I don't live in a rural village in India. This technology is fascinating, but it doesn't directly affect my life.
But it absolutely does.
Here is why you must care. The post-antibiotic era is not a regional problem confined to South Asia. It is an immediate, existential global threat.
Yes.
A carbapenem-resistant superbug brewing in a single patient in Hindupur is literally just one international plane ride away from landing in your local hospital's emergency room tomorrow morning.
Pathogens do not respect national borders.
No, they don't.
And they certainly do not care about the quality of your healthcare insurance. When the fundamental antibiotics that underpin all of modern medicine stop working, the only defense humanity has left is early intelligence and immediate, rigorous isolation.
The shift from relying on magic pills to relying on behavioral modification and early data affects every single person on this planet.
It really does.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought. I want you to mull this over as you go about the rest of your day. For the last century, we have been deeply conditioned to equate the concept of healthcare with massive, towering hospital buildings, incredibly expensive MRI machines, and powerful pharmaceutical drugs.
That infrastructure was our safety net.
But as those powerful drugs inevitably begin to fail against rapidly evolving superbugs, what if the future of human survival isn't a billion-dollar medical complex in a major metropolitan city?
What is it then?
What if our best, and perhaps only defense against the coming dark age of medicine, is just a simple, rugged solar-powered screen sitting in a dusty village square, speaking the local dialect that just tells you exactly when to stay home?